and today we will see timer driven running text message. Let's have a look. Okay, so we see that we have a canvas. The height of the canvas is 200 pixels and the width of the canvas is 300 pixels. We have a text message which is moving from left to right. It has a fixed y coordinate, but the x coordinate keeps on changing, and that's how the text is moving from left to right. We also have an input field here which allows the user to enter the text of their choice, so I can change the text anytime I want. We also have option to stop the text, let the text move, increase the speed of text, and decrease the speed of text. All this controlled by timer. Let's make it. Okay, to begin with, I already have a little bit of code here. I have created the frame and also defined the control objects. So let's see how it is. We have the frame. We have the frame. The frame is created using create_frame function. We define an object frame and simple GUI.create_frame. I just followed the syntax. The title is running text. The width of the canvas is 300. The height of the canvas is 200. So this is how we got this frame as well as canvas. Now we have a bunch of control inputs here. The first one we have is input field. We do it by using add_input function. So I have frame dot add_input. The text I want to display is enter the text message. It will call the input_handler, which is nothing but event handler, and the width of the input field is 150. Similarly, we create buttons using frame dot add_button. Add_button is a function which creates a button. We want the text button to have the text as stop the text. When this is clicked, it would call, when this button is clicked, it would call the event handler STP, and the width of the button is 150. Similarly, we have other buttons which will call their respective event handlers, and the event handlers are defined here. We haven't put the code yet because we'll work it out. For now, it's just pass. I also have the draw handler registered and defined, and that's how we see the text here. So I have registered the draw handler using set_draw_handler function, and this calls draw_handler, which actually updates the text. So if we see in the draw_handler function, it says canvas.drawText. Draw_text is a function which is used to draw text on the canvas. So if I write canvas.draw_text and give the parameters such as the text which I want to appear, which in this case is hello, and I define the coordinate. The coordinate is initialized as x coordinate is 0, so it begins with the start of the canvas, which is x coordinate 0, and y coordinate is defined as 150. Always remember, this is the origin. This is how it starts. Along the x-axis, the x coordinate increases, and along the y-axis, y coordinates increases. So the x coordinate is it's starting at the x coordinate 0 and y coordinate 150. The font is 20 and the color is red. So what's next? Next, we want to make the text as variable, so that if user enters any text here, the text is updated. Let's do it. So what we need to do is, instead of hard-coded text hello, I want a generic message. I want whatever user enters in the input field should appear in the canvas. So I made the text as a variable. Also, since our purpose is to move the text from left to right, I don't want the position to be hard coded. In fact, I want this to be a variable which we can later on change so that the text position would change. Since I have defined I have put two variables. Let us define those two variables in the define variable section. So we will put text equals hello, or maybe this time I will just give hi, and the position should be 0. Okay, this is just to make it dynamic and driven by variables instead of hard coding text and position. So we should get the same output. The only difference is now it's not hard coded and it's text. Now we need to move this text, right? So we need to get the dynamic piece of this text. We need to move it. And how do we move it? We move it by changing the position. And right now the position is, if you remember, it's the x coordinate is 0 and the y coordinate is 150, and I want to keep the y coordinate still as 150 but keep changing the x coordinate. So I need to increase the x coordinate, right? So let's make it. In order to change the position of the text, we are going to introduce a timer. What basically timer is that timer contains a handler function called timer underscore handler. Timer calls this handler function at a given interval, and when the timer handler function would be called, we would use that to change the position of our text, and that's how the text position would be changed. So let's go ahead and create the timer. We will create the object timer, and we would do it by saying simple GUI dot create underscore timer. Create underscore timer is the function which helps in creating the timer, and we will give the interval. For now, let's just hard code it to see the effect. So I would give it as 10. So after every 10 milliseconds, it would call the timer handler. Timer underscore handler. We will have to define this timer handler, but right now we are just creating the timer. So we have the interval as 10 milliseconds and the name of the handler is time underscore handler. Let's go ahead and define the time handler. And what we want to do here is we want to change the position of the text by 1, and let's make it as global position. Okay, so let's see the effect. Oh, before we go there, we have to start the timer. Always remember to start the timer, and we do it by saying timer dot start, because until the timer starts, it wouldn't call time underscore handler function and nothing will work out. So we see that now the text started moving, and that's because after every 10 milliseconds the timer is calling timer handler function, and that's how the position was changing. And interestingly, you see that the text is out of the canvas and we are not seeing the text anymore. Well, we have a solution for that. What we need is we need to define some controls, in the sense some conditions, and check is the position of text 300, because in this case the width is 300. If it is 300, then let's reset the position and make it to 0, and that's how the text would come back at the 0th position. Let's do it. since the control we are controlling the position in the time handler, we have to make the adjustments, or we have to place the condition in the time underscore handler. We'll check if position equals 300. Okay, if the position is 300, let's reset the position to 0, else position, you can just copy paste this is what we want. If it is not 300, let it increase, right? So let's see the effect now. Okay, the text is moving, it's going. Okay, it reached 300 and the position was reset, and it started all over from the beginning and again to 300. So well, that's what we wanted. So what's next? Next we want to activate or define the handlers for these control objects. Basically we have to define the event handler. So what we need to do is, the first thing is, if the user enters the text here, it should change the text. So let's define the input handler. Okay, so here we have the event handlers, and the first one we have is input handler. This will be called by the input field, and in turn the input field would pass along a message which user is entering. So what we need to do is, we need to assign the global variable text equals this message. And so if now the user changes the or enters the text message in the input field, it would have an effect. It will change the value of the text, and the new text would appear in the canvas. Okay, so I want to say, how are you? Okay, we see that the text is changed because the global text is now how are you instead of hi. Okay, that's good. So now let's work out the stop and the let the text move buttons. If we need to stop the text, what we need to do? We have to think here. So the position of text is changing all by the timer, or basically the timer underscore handler, and timer underscore handler is actually called by the timer object, right? So whatever is happening with the position of the text is actually dependent on timer. So if we want to stop the text, actually what we need to do is, we need to stop the timer. So we have to say timer dot stop. Okay, and similarly, if we want to start that timer object or timer again, we need to say timer dot start. Okay, this should take care of the two buttons, stop the text and let the text go. Let's see its effect. Okay, stop the text. Okay, we stop the timer. The timer is stopped. It no longer calls the timer underscore handler function, and since it is no longer calling timer underscore handler function, the position is not changing, and that's why it is stopped. It's static. It is not moving. If I want to move the text now, if I click on this, the timer would again start. Okay, the timer started, and it's again calling the timer underscore handler function at a certain interval and changing the position. Position is getting increased by 1, and that's how the timer is moving. Now we are going to bring another interesting feature here, which is increase the text speed and also decrease the text speed. So how can we increase the text speed? So if we give if we change the value of the interval, so right now the timer is calling, let's see the interval which we have defined here. So right now the timer is calling timer underscore handler at the rate of 10 milliseconds. Every 10 milliseconds the timer underscore handler is called. Now if I make it 1, it would call it more frequently or faster, or if I change it to 1000 millisecond, it would call it slowly. So that's how we are going to control the speed of the text. Basically we are changing the value of the interval, the we are changing the interval at which time underscore handler function is called. So to achieve that, we have a constraint. We cannot use we cannot change the value of the interval for the instance which is already defined. So basically what I mean is, we already have an instance of timer here, and there was already the interval defined as 10 milliseconds. Now we cannot change this in the middle. We cannot change that. In order to do this, we will have to create another instance of timer. So what we will do basically is, we will say timer equals simple GUI. Basically we are creating another instance of timer dot create underscore timer, and this time we will give the interval as, say for example, we want to increase the speed, so we will give it as 1 millisecond, and we will call the timer underscore handler. Okay, similarly we will define an instance of timer to decrease the speed, because we cannot decrease this we cannot change the value of interval in this instance. Once we have created the instance, we cannot change the value of the intervals in the middle. If we want to change the value of the interval, we have to create different instances of the timer. That's the key here. So in this case, we will define it as 100 milliseconds. So here we are calling the timer underscore handler slowly. Here we are calling the timer underscore handler fast. Now since we have created the instance of the timer, certainly we need to start the timer. So we will say timer dot start, and similarly we will start this instance of timer as well. So what we are doing is, when we click on increase the speed button, it should create this instance of timer. It should start the timer, and once this timer is started, this instance will be active, and the interval will change to 1, or basically it will have an interval of 1 and the speed will be increased. Similarly, when we click on the decrease the text speed button, it will create another instance with the interval of 100 milliseconds, and once it is started, this timer will start calling timer underscore handler function at the interval of 100 milliseconds. Now there is another key piece here. When we create an instance and start using that instance, we have to actually stop the old instance. So basically what I mean is, if I want the text or the speed of text to be increased, and if I want this timer to be in effect, I need to actually stop the previous instance. I need to stop the instance of this timer. So what I would do is, I would say timer dot stop, and if I say timer dot stop before this instance is created, or this instance kicks in, the previous instance of the timer would stop, and then we will not have multiple timers working at the same time, which may cause problem. So let's also go ahead and define the timer as global timer. So we have global timer dot stop. We stopped the previous instance of the timer. We created the new instance with an updated interval, and we have started this instance, and same thing we will do in this case. Okay, let's go ahead and start the program and see, run the program and see its effect. Okay, the text is moving. Let's stop the text. Start the text. It's moving. Let's increase the speed of the text. Okay, so it increased the speed of text. Okay, let's decrease the speed of the text. Okay, it's really decreased, like moving really slow. Let's increase the speed again. You see how it is switching the instances, and before it switches before it activates the new instance, it's actually stopping the previous instance and activating the new one. Let's stop the text. That particular instance is stopped. Let's start it. That particular instance is started because we defined the instance, the timer object as global. Okay, increase the speed. Okay, decrease the speed. Now you must be wondering why am I stopping the instance of the previous, why am I stopping the previous timer instance. Let's see its effect if we don't do that. So say in the increase text speed button, I comment this. So basically I'm not stopping the previous instance of timer which was created here. Instead, I'm just, without stopping the previous instance, I created another timer instance and started it. Let's see how it works. Okay, we should see some magic, right? So we increase the speed. Okay, I clicked it again, again, again. You see how speed is increasing? It keeps on increasing. It's not the constant value which I defined here, 1. It's not based on the interval which I defined here, 1. It's increasing, and the reason is because multiple instances, whenever I click here, multiple instances of timers are running and calling time underscore handler. So this instance is also calling time underscore handler, and the instance here is also calling time underscore handler. This instance is calling time underscore handler at the rate of 10, and this instance is calling at the rate of 1, and so multiple times the time handler is being called, and that's why the speed was kind of increasing so much. So let's go back and uncomment it, and now this would be resolved. Even if you click multiple times, the speed is not increasing drastically because the previous, whenever we click on this button, this instance is created, but the previous instance is this instance is started and becomes active, but the previous instance is stopped. I hope this helps in understanding the concept of timers, and please leave your comment and feedback. Thanks.